why would China be helping this guy, attacking China? He's telling everybody you need to get armed to the teeth because the Chinese are coming. The Chinese aren't amused when when Hegseth goes down to the security conference in Singapore and starts saying that that China is coming and you need to do it. I mean, you see a raft of things happening. You had the Japanese foreign minister, defense minister, get up there and say, hey, China's a threat and we have to arm ourselves, and they have a big arsenal. Well, they don't say that about the U.S., the country that has been occupying them since 1945. It's one signal out there that the U.S. continues this kind of encirclement campaign, even though it says, okay, we'll cooperate with China to a certain degree to get what we need, rare earths, access to markets, etc. But we will continue our long-term program, which is to isolate China as much as possible. This idea of interfering with China's trade by controlling choke points or making it chaotic, and then going after China's energy sources, as we can see with Venezuela, Nigeria, and Iran. So that continues apace. It's not just there. Look what the Australians came up and said, we don't need new submarines. We can get old submarines. Old submarines are great. I mean, I wrote an article and I said, okay, what point? China is their largest trading partner, 34% of their foreign trade, and also 24% of their entire GDP. And the idea is that you're going to use the tax revenues from profits from the companies that trade with China to build an arsenal and weapons to fight China. How are you going to do this? I mean, there's this great line from this one show. It was in 2017. It was just making fun. And then this guy's asking the military guy, so let me get this straight. You want to protect our trade and our trade passages, okay, from the country we trade with. The guys sit around going, yeah. Does that seem a little odd? Everyone's like, no. It seems perfectly acceptable. Our strategy is completely nuts. All right. But anyways, getting back to the submarines. My family built submarines, 28 in World War II. So I know a little bit indirectly about them. They're complicated machines. They need to be airtight. Otherwise, not good. So if they give 3 to existing ones to Australia, given what they have said that they want, I think 32, 33 attack submarines and 12 brand new ballistic submarines. The current rate that they can produce, which is about 1.3 submarines per year, it will take them 24 years to 24 and a half, if you want to be correct, to get to the number that they've said they wanted. I think time goes by and so does technology. I mean, already today, submarines are becoming somewhat obsolete because you can use unmanned submersible drones. They can carry missiles. They can sit on the bottom. They don't need air or food or anything like that. They can even manufacture their own electricity from the seawater. I just don't see this as even rational. You have an objective that is absurd. I'm going to fight with I'm going to literally fight with the people who give me a lifeline and have protected me from economic downturns during the 2008 election meltdown. And I'm going to get submarines that are going to be useless. I'm going to invest a tremendous amount of money. I mean, so you see countries kind of lining up saying that, accepting this narrative that China is a threat. And that's the thing that kind of worries me. I think for short term, people like Donald Trump, whoever comes in, will recognize that there are supply chain issues, market issues. But the question is, does this kind of continuous encirclement happen? Because if it does, unfortunately, that does not spell well for the world.
But I know. Those submarine obvious, they do serve a purpose. The military industrial complex is getting paid. That is a purpose. I mean, like I would say that is the goal. The goal is never to fight China. The goal is to continually funnel money into the pockets of military contractors, which does very well. It's a feature, not a bug.
Yeah, well, until the money runs out. Right now, if you look across the world, there should be a lot of concern. You have the central banks of countries around the world. About 70% of them have started selling U.S. Treasuries. And then on top of that, there's a Reuters report released 2 days ago, which talked about the fact that high net worth individuals, the 1% who own most everything, guess what they're doing? They're also selling treasuries. This is a time when the U.S. is trying to borrow more money for its loading up the debt bomb. Maybe that will help. $39 trillion and counting. By the end of the year, it'll be over 40. That means they have to issue new debt. They have debts that roll over that they reissue, and the interest rates are going to go up. Already it's $1 trillion out of a $6 trillion budget. Now keep in mind, only $4 trillion comes in through taxes and revenues. So the U.S. is in a hardened position where it's borrowing $2 trillion a year just to survive, and that does not include extras. Wars, all that kind of stuff. That you have to add the special sauce and increase your debt borrowings. So at the same time that the appetite to sell debt goes up, you have the major banks and individuals selling. That means that in order to attract investors, they're going to have to raise their interest rates. It's at $1 trillion. That goes to $1.5 trillion, and you're spending $1.5 trillion on your defense budget. Last time I checked, that's $3 trillion out of a $6 trillion budget, $2 trillion of which you're borrowing. This is not sustainable. I mean, if I told you should just live on your credit cards, just keep borrowing. Every year, you just borrow 1/3 of your total expenses and just add it on. And don't worry about the interest costs. Just borrow more to pay them. In many places, this would be called a Ponzi scheme. I borrow to pay back the people I borrowed from, with no end in sight and absolutely no indication that there's any plan either by Republicans or Democrats to pay it back in any meaningful way. You can say, oh, well, we won't, you remember the Freedom Caucus? We will never allow one single more dollar of debt to be added to the debt pile. Well, I think that was about $3 trillion ago. They seem to have rolled over and shown their belly to Trump scratches it.
But I know. Trump said, if you borrow like $10,000 from the bank, it's on you. But if you borrow $100 million from the bank, it's on the bank. It's no longer your problem. Right?
He knows that well. I mean, he had 6 bankruptcies, and the banks were actually giving him money to support his lifestyle because he somehow convinced them that everything that what little they could get back would be worth less unless they invested in his publicity machine. So he was still keeping his plane. He kept one of his boats. He had to sell one in a big size out there and things like that. But he didn't have to sell his house and real estate or the Bedminster place or things like that. So he was able to convince them to float him along until he got to a point where he could actually start. He didn't pay them back. He went bankrupt. But on some of the assets, he was able to reach some sort of accommodation. This guy is incredible. He loves debt. I mean, when he was building the Chicago Trump Tower, he borrowed hundreds of millions of dollars to complete it. And then, because of the financial crisis, he says, I don't have to pay you back. Force majeure. We had an unprecedented downturn, so I don't need to pay you back. Obviously, the bank didn't feel that way. They sued him. There was a close to settlement, but it was assumed that they got their money back. Otherwise, it would have taken the collateral, which was the tower itself. But after that, that's when Trump became unbankable. No one would lend him any money until you had the Europeans hungry for to expand into America, and somebody came up to him and actually said, "Well, here's a guy. He doesn't have much debt, all right, and he has different assets and things like that. We should be lending him money." And they did, much to their chagrin. And there's a lot of strange money flows going through there in the billions of dollars. But he wasn't with the bank. All right. He was with what they call private credit. Private credit is rich guys are looking for deals. They don't want to go wandering around. So they use banks as consolidators. People go to the banks and said, "Hey, I got a deal." Well, the commercial people, the real bank won't touch it. Okay. Well, how about you guys? I'll offer you a better rate. And they walk it around to different clients. And they say, "Hey, would you be interested in? Here's the interest rate. Here's our evaluation." And because Trump couldn't get credit, he had very little credit. So it looked good on paper. But it became an interesting thing. There was a theory that this particular bank had a lot of Russian oligarch clients, and they were always looking to move money around, if you know what I mean. And you like to send it to the laundromat. Where did this money come from? Don't ask. Okay. Anyway, they seem to be very interested in Trump's properties, and not only did they fund it, but they would buy the properties. They buy them outright, take a mortgage on them, and that mortgage money was somehow clean. I'm not going to say it was a money laundering machine, but others have said so. So this was the way he goes about his business. He's very he runs all of these ideas. Debt is nothing to him. In fact, as you pointed out, he thinks the bigger the debt is, the more it's other people's problem, not his. And so when he sees things going, I mean, he went out and asked, "I want $4.5–5 trillion of bandwidth, so I don't have to come back to Congress and ask you what the money's going to be used for. I can just go out and spend like a drunken sailor." And it passed. It went through. The Republicans have been kind of kneeling over, but they are concerned. There's concerns that he's getting a little too much over the top. They understand his strategies. Whether they agree or not is another thing, but they're concerned about these midterm elections. They've been gerrymandering like crazy, changing the electoral maps of any state they can get their hands on, and they've been fairly successful. But the problem that they have is at some point you run out of runway, and the American people, independents, are the ones who decide who's going to be in office. Independents are not always independents. They find in voting patterns, and I love this stuff because I used to run campaigns. Their voting patterns are that they favor one party or another, but they will switch. They're not totally loyal. So in this case, his biggest problem isn't gerrymandering maps. It's the fact that he has one of the lowest approval ratings among independents ever. So when you're down in that less than 20% among independents, that means you're going to lose.
Yeah, but America can create money supply, right? I mean, they can just print money. I mean, even Elon Musk said, at this point, with the level of U.S. national debt, the only way out is just inflate the debt away, and they can do that just by keep on printing money.
Well, yes, they can, but what does that do? It makes American products cheaper, but it also leads to massive inflation, and you have warping effects that happen. You have effects on employment, effects on the economy. imports become more expensive because in essence you're deflating your dollar. It's worth less. And literally it could get to the point where it's worth less, as in any kind of hyperinflation. So they have to be a little bit careful about this. This idea that I can print my way to to being financially responsible is nonsense. There are people who believe that. They say, well, they'll always pay the interest. Sure, they pay the interest, but the principal, all right, if I put 1,000 into a Treasury note, I'll get the interest on a regular basis, but what does that note carry? Who wants to buy that from me? All right, if inflation starts going up, I'm going to start saying, well, I need a bigger return on this. I need 16, 17%. And you're back to the 70s, hyperinflation. This is not the way to dig out your economy. It's not going to make, people aren't going to invest in the economy because there's no predictability. Right? And that's Americans or international. I'm not going to say, oh, look, there's a hyperinflation place. Look at Argentina, right? Yeah, they controlled inflation by killing the economy. I don't think that that's the way you want to do it. So this idea that printing money solves all things is, in my opinion, complete nonsense. There are so many downsides to this which you never escape, and literally ruins your economy.
What's a way out? Like right now, we're so deep in the hole. How do you dig yourself out of that hole?
Well, eventually everyone can expect some sort of depreciation. Donald Trump said he wanted at least 30%. But if you start looking at the real economics, how can the United States be competitive? The U.S., we have plenty of resources. That's not an issue. The question is, what is the cost of getting those resources into usable form? You have higher labor charges. Electricity in the United States is about even with electricity in China for industrial purposes, but for the average person, it's simply higher, almost double. So, you might, in theory, have this idea that you can do it, but then you start getting into the details. China has the most up-to-date equipment and these transformers. Transformers allows you to take energy from one place to another place to establish a grid, which allows you a lot of redundancy and things like that. The U.S. grid is aging and crumbling. You can see that in many states around, especially places like Texas and things like that, where they privatize the electricity grid. And these guys say, well, we're not going to put any our money into it, right? If you want to upgrade a system, you give us the money and then we'll profit from it. The usual stuff. So you start looking, how can the U.S. be, straight up competitive with Europe? Well, I think they can. Europe's energy cost is even higher than the United States. They're stuck buying LNG for somewhere between 2.5 to 3 times as much. You have to compress. LNG is natural gas. You compress it. You have to have special ships, and then you have to decompress it. It really is a quite involved situation, and that's why it costs more versus piped gas. Piped gas was making Germany and a lot of other European nations in pretty good shape. They at least had a lower energy, even if their wages were higher, compliance was higher, etc. But the U.S., you depreciate the dollar so far. Then the question is, how do you take advantage of that? Are the people going to reindustrialize America? I don't think so. Even when you depreciate the dollars, you're still paying people, money at a higher rate, and they're going to ask for more because the cost of living has gone up. So you're kind of in this trap. It's a Gordian knot. You pull on one string, and the whole ball of twine gets tighter because you can't separate the strings. And this is the kind of situation the U.S. is in. It's taken 45 years to get where we are today. We've sacrificed the middle class. Back in 71 or 2, it was 60% of America, over 60% of Americans were middle class. Today, by the same measures, it's less than 40. Now, there's been some growth in the upper income levels, but nothing that is comparable. And go back to what I said earlier, 60% of Americans across the board feel that they're living paycheck to paycheck. They don't have, hundreds of dollars in their savings accounts to do it. And right now, one of the most depressing things that I've seen is 3 days ago, they announced that savings are going down because people are digging into their savings in order to just maintain their lifestyle. And I'm not talking about trips to Jamaica. What they're doing is they're borrowing for food, pay the mortgage bill, pay the car bill, and things like that. That's obviously not sustainable. So you have a depressing situation for most Americans. And that's why it's going to be very difficult for Donald Trump and the Republicans come this midterm election.
Yeah.